recorded as well for those that couldn't make it. And there were a couple that sent apologies and asked for the recording. But indeed, it is a great honor to welcome Rabbi Vigler. And as Dr. Katz have said, and we just see that, you've got to see the silver linings even in the dark times. And Zoom really has been incredible that we've been able to host. Obviously, it's not just me, but throughout, shuls, community centers have been able to have guests, which otherwise would not have been possible. And it certainly made our time in lockdown under COVID a lot easier, and we've been able to get inspiration. So this is the third talk in the series of 3, where we spoke about tshuva, tefillah, tzedokah, the 3 real pillars. They're obviously, in essence, inside of us at all times, and something that we need to use at all times, but particularly over this period of Elul and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. It's the 3 things that we need to utilize to really beg Hashem to give us the decree that we're looking for. And God forbid, if there was going to be a bad decree or not such a great decree, we know that it's these 3 things that's returning. It's the connection to Hashem through prayer. And what Rabbi Vigler is going to speak about tonight, or this afternoon, his time, the interpersonal connections, us and our fellow Jew. It's those 3 things which really allow us to get the best possible decree over this period. Just a little bit of introduction to Rabbi Vigler. As Dr. Katz have said, yes, wonderful yichus. His father, many of you know his father, the rabbi of Orange Grove, 9th Street Shul. So Rabbi Vigler, Rabbi Uriel Vigler is the son. But also something very interesting. I don't think Rabbi Vigler will answer soon. I don't think many rabbis can say that are currently in America that they were born in Zimbabwe. So Rabbi Uriel Vigler is Zimbabwe born. He's a current director, the spiritual leader of the Chabad Israel Center of the Upper East Side of Manhattan, where he leads a community together with his Rebbetzin Shevi. They've been in that position since 2005. And in addition, and please God, Rabbi Vigler, I'm giving you an advance notice warning. We'd love to have you back. Rabbi Vigler is also the founder of the most amazing organization. He founded an organization called Belev Echad, which helps wounded IDF soldiers. And they brought out, and he has gala evenings, the most amazing events that he plans for these soldiers who unfortunately have been injured, been wounded, protecting our beloved state of Israel, land of Israel. That in itself is a full-time job, and but he manages somehow to combine all the roles: spiritual leader, the founder of Belev Echad. And please go, Rabbi Uriel, in time to come, you'll give us a talk on all your wonderful the initiatives of Belev Echad. Also, speak about a full-time job. Thank God, Kanai Nohara is a proud father of 8 children, and that 8 includes triplets. So if you didn't think he was busy before then, he certainly does have his hands full. And again, it just makes it that much more of a privilege and an honor that Rabbi Vigler took the time to be with us this evening, to share some insight, to share some inspiration. But possibly the most important thing about Rabbi Vigler is he's a childhood friend. We really go back to children, to our school days, to the tennis courts. He was a wonderful tennis player. There I could match him, but I could never catch him because he was a great sprinter, really fast on the athletics field. But a real tool around a true mensch, and someone that even though we're far geographically, although Baruch Hashem for Zoom, it connects us, he's always remained a friend. When I asked him to speak this evening, it wasn't a hesitation. Obviously needed to find time in his diary, but no hesitation. And Rabbi Vigler, thank you so much for availing yourself this evening. I know the weeks leading up to Yom Tov, there's so much that you need to do as well. So thank you, and we look forward to your words of Torah to give us the inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. Wow, I'm touched. It's amazing. I actually remember those tennis days playing with Rabbi Richard. You know, it was one thing. It was probably the last time I played tennis was in that Torah Academy court. We used to play all the time, and it's amazing growing up with Rabbi Richard. I mean, we were classmates for years and years and years. I mean, you know, Rodney and I mean, that was that was us. And Rabbi, after Rabbi Kesselman, Rabbi Hech, we were all classmates. So it's really a privilege doing this. Third in a series of Tshuva Tefillah Tzedokah. So yeah, I was born in Bulawayo. In 79, we moved to Springs. So I actually grew up in Springs. My father was a rabbi over there. And in 1988, he moved to Orange Grove, where I continued my growth. And now find myself in the Upper East Side, a little dopey, tiny little dopey called the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And that's where I am now, and honored to be with you guys here today. So can we start? Are we good? Okay. So let's just start with a little story on Tzedakah, basically. So the story is told about this guy called Gimple. Gimple was, living in Miami, and he was just starting to get close to the Chabad guys in Miami, and suddenly somebody told him, you have to be by the Lubavitcher Rebbe in the Chabad headquarters in Brooklyn, New York. You have to be there for Simchat Torah. So Simchat Torah, he finds himself with tens of thousands of Hasidim, all black hats and coats, and, he's not religious yet, but he's on his way. And he finds himself there, and suddenly there's an auction. People are buying things, and he doesn't know what's going on, but he thinks buying things. He raises his hand. He says, I'm buying whatever they're buying. I don't know what they were buying. But the way they did, they sold, the Ata Haresas and, the beautiful privilege of leading the Hakafot, so to speak. So right after Simchat Torah, when he went to pay his check, whatever he said. So he said, whatever the Rebbe wants, that's what I'm going to give. So the Rebbe said, I want from you $5,000. Now, $5,000 for him in that time, in the 70s, was a fortune of money. It's a lot of money, especially if you convert it to rands. It's a lot of money, $5,000. So he didn't really have it. But, the Rebbe said then that when a person gives tzedakah, gives charity, you make 10 times what you give. So he figured, I give 5,000, I'm going to make 50, it's a great deal. So he wrote the check. It was very, very difficult for him to write it. And that's it. Anyway, he went back to Miami, and he's waiting, his business dealings, he's waiting for the $50,000 to come. He's waiting. It's not coming. And he's like starting to curse out his Chabad friends. Like, why did you tell me to go to the Rebbe? It doesn't work, this thing. And he's really in financial distress. He needs money. So the months go by, 1 month, 2 months, 5 months, 6 months. On the last day of the year, the 29th day of Elul, he gets a call from a local hospital that said he has a building, a building with neighbors, one of theirs, and they wanted to buy his building. And this building, this guy Gimple planned to make a lot of money off. He wanted to develop it, whatever. So he said, the building's not for sale. So the hospital, the guy says, tell me the price. How much do you want from it? So he named an outrageous, exorbitant sum of money that anybody in his right mind, nobody would give that money because it's a lot of money. And the hospital guy said, you got it. Let's sign the deal today. Basically, it was a very, very valuable property for them. And even at this outrageous sum, it was just worth it for them. That's why you can never put a real price on real estate. And the deposit that he got that day before Rosh Hashanah, the deposit was $50,000. So Gimple is very, very proud of his business deal, of his charity, $5,000. So that year, Simchat Torah, the second year, he went back to Lubavitch headquarters, to Chabad headquarters, and now he knows already what the auction is all about. So he's waiting until he can raise his hand and give money. Anyway, the auction comes, the same idea, and he raises his hand. He says, I'm giving money. And then they ask him how much. He says, whatever sum the Rebbe tells me to write, that's the sum. I don't care how much it is. He's all excited. Anyway, right after Simchat Torah, he goes to a private audience with the Rebbe, and he takes out his checkbook, and he says, Rebbe, tell me how much to write. And the Rebbe looks at him, and he says, I want you to write a check of $126. And he became crestfallen. $126? Like, what? What do you mean? Last year I gave $5,000. The Rebbe said, last year, I wanted to teach you how to give charity. I wanted to teach you that you have to have big hasagot, think big. Whatever you give, God will give you 10 times the amount. This year, I want you to figure this out on your own. I'm not going to tell you to write a big check. You figure it out on your own. So that's the introduction to the topic today, which is charity. So without further ado, I'm going to share the screen. Hold on. With Zoom, you could actually share things. So here you go. Can you all see the screen here? Text number 1. Yeah, okay, fine, good. So let's just look at the source, okay? So text number 1, the whole source of tzedakah, where we find it, it comes from Parshat Re'eh, which we just read a couple of weeks ago. So you can look over here in the Hebrew, you can look in the English. It says like this: when you have a needy person amongst you, I'm going to read in English, it's probably easier. You shall not harden your heart, and you shall not close your hand from your needy brother. Rather, you shall open your hand to him, you shall lend him sufficient for his needs, which he is lacking. I'm not going to read the whole entire thing, but please read it for yourselves in front of you. But this is where this is the source of giving charity. This is where it comes from, the mitzvah in the Torah. Continue with source number 2. The Talmud in Rosh Hashanah says, Rabbi Yitzchak further said, 4 things can cancel a man's fate. Namely, what are they? Charity, supplication, which is prayer, a change of name. So for example, if somebody is, God forbid, sick, is ill, is not well, so many times we will add a name. If it's a male, a common name to add would be Chaim, because then kind of his name, his luck changes. If it's a female, a common name would be Chaya, or a name that signifies blessing and strength. And the 4th thing is change of conduct, which is tshuva. But as it says in the Gemara in the Talmud, that charity, as it is written, and charity delivers from death. Tzedokah tatil mimavet. Okay, so we know that when a person gives charity, charity literally saves you from death. Okay, so and as an introduction, a further introduction to this, the Talmud in Tractate Baba Batra tells us, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, he who does charity habitually will have sons wise, wealthy, and versed in the Agadah. So charity comes with many, many, many blessings. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful idea. Charity is something I encourage my community in Manhattan as well to give, if it's to donate to the shul or to education or to our soldiers program. You know, this is something that I'm doing many, many weeks of the year or months of the year, so to speak. Okay. Not only that, charity has another additional benefit. It has been taught. The same Talmud says, Rabbi Yehuda says, great is charity in that it brings the redemption nearer. Okay, so it brings Mashiach closer. You want to bring Mashiach? You bring Mashiach closer. By the way, just as a side thing, why does charity bring Mashiach closer? It doesn't say that about keeping Yom Kippur, about blowing the shofar in Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't say it brings Mashiach. Why charity specifically? Because when a person makes money, he or she invests all their life force into it. They invest everything. They're kishkes. They invest everything they have into making money. So when you give that money away, you say to God, everything I have is yours. It's yours. It doesn't belong to me. 90% partnership, God says you can keep for yourself, but 10% is mine. So you demonstrate that everything you have is really God's, and that's the whole idea of Mashiach. That's why it says charity is so great, it brings Mashiach. Okay, so all this is an introduction to what we want to focus on today, which comes in the next source. So today I want to focus on, charity. We can give many shiurim on charity, how much charity a person is supposed to give, and if it's before taxes, if it's after taxes, if it's from your company, if it's not from your company. There's so many different laws associated with charity, and I'm going to leave all those laws for Rabbi Richard to give you over the next few months. He can give you all those laws. Today, we're going to focus just on one tiny little thing, which is intention. The intent when it comes to give charity, and we'll see it's not so simple. So text number 5, Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi writes in his Shulchan Aruch, one does not fulfill their obligation regarding any of the mitzvot unless the act was performed with the expressed intent of performing it. Okay, that's a person shofar as a casual activity for practice has not fulfilled his obligation. So let's give an example. If a person blows the shofar but does not have any intention to fulfill the obligation on Rosh Hashanah, he, and not only he, but everybody listening to him does not fulfill their obligation. When you make Kiddush on Friday night, you need to have in mind to fulfill the obligation. When you bake matzah on Pesach, the people, the man or the woman who's actually kneading the dough has to say, L'shem matzahs mitzvah, like this is the intention of fulfilling the mitzvah. So every mitzvah, you have to have intention to fulfill the mitzvah. How about charity? Do I need to have intention to give charity? Do I need to say, by the way, there's no blessing for charity either, as we'll see in a minute. There's no, we say a blessing for everything. Before you blow the shofar, you make a blessing. Blessed art thou, O God, who commanded me to blow shofar. Blessed art thou, O God, who commanded me to say Kiddush. Like you make a blessing for everything. For charity, you don't say a blessing. You just give the guy charity. So why is it? So do you need to have intention to give charity? Meaning, when I give that $100 or 100 Rand to the poor person, do I need to have in mind that here I am, dear Lord, here I am, I'm about to fulfill the mitzvah of giving charity? Or is it enough that I just give the guy charity and I'm thinking about the local cricket? You know, when I was in South Africa, it was Kepta Vessels and Hansi Kronier, so that's the people I remember. I haven't followed cricket since then. So Kepta Vessels, you know, is that what I'm thinking of? Or am I thinking of the mitzvah to give charity? Okay? So the Rambam Maimonides writes, by the way, if anybody has any questions, then we'll just stop me. No problem. You could also share it in the notes. The chat. I'm going to be looking at the chat periodically as well. So I think you all have the ability to unmute. If you're not, then just chat. Okay. So Maimonides writes, whenever a person gives charity to a poor person with an unpleasant countenance and with his face buried in the earth, he loses and destroys his merit, even if he gives him 1,000 gold pieces. Maimonides writes very clearly that you need to have intention to give charity. In other words, let's say somebody comes to my house and says, you know, I really, really want charity. Please give me charity. And I'm not in the mood for him or her. And I'm in a bad mood. I'm a sour face. And I give him 1,000 golden pieces. I mean, that's a lot of money. But I give it to him with a sour face, with an unpleasant countenance, like I'm really, really not in the mood for you. I detest the fact that you came to my house, but I'm giving it to you anyway. You lose your merit. That's what it says to you. I mean, very, very clearly, you lose your merit. It's no two ways about it. So it seems that you need kavanah. You need to have the right intentions when it comes to give charity. Okay? Now we'll see the other side of the coin. We'll see that the Rambam Maimonides contradicts himself when it comes to giving charity. And we will see that it's not so simple. Okay, so bear that in mind. Do you need to have, like, if I give a guy 1,000 Rand, what does he care what my mind thinks? What does he care that I hate him? As long as he gets 1,000 Rand, can buy himself food, can pay his tuition, can pay for a wedding, whatever it is. Like, what does he care what my intention is? And yet Maimonides writes very clearly in text number 6 that we just read. He says, if you don't have a pleasant countenance, if your face is buried in the earth, meaning from anger, from whatever it is, you lose your merit. No mitzvah, I'm sorry. So let's see text number 7. There's a law regarding the law called shichecha. So in the olden days, the commodity, the trade, people weren't doing hedge funds or lawyers or doctors. They were primarily involved in agriculture, in farming. So the Torah writes, when you reap your harvest in your field, and you forget a sheaf in the field, you know, you're reaping and you go now home with your load, with your package, and you forgot a sheaf in the field, the law states you shall not go back to take it. It shall be left for the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, so that the Lord your God will bless you in all that you do. This is called the mitzvah of forgetting. It's the only mitzvah in the entire Torah which you fulfill from forgetting something. Right? Normally, if I forget something, it's not advisable. It's not a mitzvah, right? I forget to make kiddush. I forget to lay. I forget to wake up in the morning and put on tefillin. I forget to install the mezuzah in my new home. All these are sins. This is the only place in the Torah where we find that if you forget something, you actually fulfill a mitzvah. Okay? Text number 8. As a result of this mitzvah, the practical implication regarding charity, and again, the beauty of the source in front of you is that not only you could see the name of the book, Sifri, but you could also see, you know, the side commentary. See over there. So you could see who wrote the book, where it was written. That's the beauty of this course here. Anyways, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, how do we know that if someone loses a selah, coin from his hand, and it is found by a pauper who then benefits from it, the Torah credits him with this mitzvah? It is for this reason, the verse states, for the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, so that the Lord your God will bless you in all that you do. In other words, as a direct result of the law of forgetting, so if I'm walking in the street and a rand goes out of my pocket, or $1 goes out of my pocket, and I forget it, and somebody comes and picks it up and benefits from it, I have fulfilled the mitzvah. So we see clearly that you don't need intention to fulfill the mitzvah of charity. So why did the Rambam write in text number 6, we read it, that if you give a poor person money, but you have sour intentions, or your face is sour, you lose your mitzvah. Here, when you don't have any intention at all, you lost a coin on the street, you fulfill the mitzvah. Right? And he finishes off. Now, if one can earn merit even without intending to do so, and the Torah considers it as a worthy act, how much more so when one intends to do something worthy and carries it out. So let's look at this now. This course, by the way, that we're reading here was created by Chabad Worldwide. This is the Chabad Worldwide course on charity. I'm going to just deviate a little bit because text number 9 of here focuses on blessings, that we don't make a blessing for it, for the mitzvah of charity. I don't want to get into that tangent right now. So let's just skip that for a minute and let's go straight to text number 10. Okay, text number 10 is perhaps the most important text when it comes to charity. You see, the Rambam over here details who you're supposed to give charity to, what is the greatest method of giving charity to, and there's 8 levels, right? There's 8 levels in charity. Before we read it, I just want to preface, like a lot of people ask me all the time, for example, is it charity if I give money to a non-Jew? Is it only to a Jew? If a non-Jew asks me for money, should I give him or her money? Should I not? Is it worse? Is it not worse? Like there's a lot of laws associated with this, but I'm not going to get into that now. I'm going to just focus on these 8 levels of charity, which you need to have in front of you all the time when you giving charity. Okay, so there's 8 levels in charity from the Rambam, Maimonides, each level surpassing the other. The highest level, beyond which there is none, is a person who supports a Jew who has fallen into poverty by giving him a present or a loan, entering into partnership with him, or finding him work so that his hand will be fortified so that he will not have to ask others for alms. Concerning this, the verse states, "You shall support him, the stranger is resident, and he shall live among you." Implied is that you should support him before he falls and becomes needy. The highest level of giving charity is to give somebody a job. You give somebody a job, what happens is you've saved his dignity. You've given him the ability to work. You've given him the ability to support himself. So this is something that's absolutely incredible. You know, they tell the story of Reb Shmelke Nickelsburg. When he was a young child, he was a famous tzaddik, a righteous man, but when he was a young child, so he was about 8, 9 years old. He was in the home of another tzaddik, a righteous person. And this righteous person, it was during the week, and his wife was washing for hamoitzi. Okay, so she washed her hands. She said the blessing, Baruch Atah Hashem al netilat yadayim, and you cannot talk. And when a woman washes, so she has to take off her rings because it shouldn't be what's called a chatzitza. Anyway, she took off her rings. And the local thief, the local ganef, what happened is he comes into the house just then and he sees these precious rings. So without even thinking twice, he grabs the rings and runs away, runs down the street. Now the Rebbitzin, she couldn't even say anything because she didn't say hamoitzi yet. She couldn't talk. So when she was able to talk, she ate a little bit of hamoitzi. She told her husband, it was stolen. So this tzaddik told Reb Shmelke Nickelsburg, who was a little young child then, he told him, run after the thief. So he was thinking, run after the thief. Okay, grab him, grab the rings back. And he told him, no, run after the thief and tell him, I give him the rings as an absolute present. He can keep it. It's yours to keep. Do whatever you want with it. So the young child who was, young, 10, 11 years, 9, 10, 11 years old, he ran after the thief, and he was a young guy. He chased him and he found him. And when the thief sees him, he says, obviously you're coming to take the rings back. He says, no, I'm not. The rabbi told me to tell you that these rings are a present. You can keep them. They are 100% yours. And the thief says, that doesn't make sense. Are you sure he said that? He doesn't mean that. Yeah, take it back. Fine, take it back. And Rabbi Shmelke says, no, the rabbi I work for is 100% scrupulous and honest. And if he said, these are your rings as a present, then you can keep them. So the thief says, I feel bad now. What should I do? So the young Reb Shmelka Nikolsburg told him, what I suggest you do is these rings are worth 30 rubles. You know, the fortune of money, they're worth 30 rubles. Sell them, and with the money, give it to charity. Give it to Tzedokah. So that's exactly what the thief does. He sold those, made 30 rubles, gave it to charity, and he felt so good. He felt with such pleasure to be able to give that he decided right then and there to get a job, to stop stealing, get a job, and give tzedakah every single month, to give charity, because it felt so good. So what happens is, you see, when you have a thief stealing from you, you have two options. Call the police, stop him, or what the rabbi did in this case, transform the thief, give him the ability to be able to give charity. The point is, when you see a poor person, the easy way is to just give him 1,000 rand. Here, done with it. The much harder way, but the much more dignifying way, but the much more deeper and meaningful way, and the highest level of giving charity is to give him a job, because then he's supporting himself. Okay, so that's level number one. Level number two, a lower level than this, is one who gives charity to the poor without knowing to whom he gave and without the poor person knowing from whom he received. Again, why is this level number two? Because the Torah is worried about dignity, always worried about the dignity of the recipient. So over here, he doesn't know who gave it. The giver doesn't know. Nobody knows. Second highest level. The third, a lower level than this, is an instance when the giver knows to whom he is giving, but the poor person does not know from whom he received. Again, why is this the third level? And it's higher than the fourth level because, again, you're protecting the dignity of the recipient, of the poor person. He doesn't know from whom he received. So he doesn't know the Yankel gave him money. So when he sees Yankel in the shul, and he doesn't feel bad because he doesn't know the Yankel gave him money. He doesn't feel embarrassed. His dignity is protected. Okay, a lower level than that is an instant where the poor person knows from whom he took, but the donor doesn't know whom he gave. So again, why is that lower? Because, that's the next level. A lower level than that is giving the poor person in his hand before he asks. Again, the idea of dignity, the poor person didn't even have to ask, you already gave him. A lower level than that is giving him after he asks. A lower level than that is giving him less than what is appropriate, but with a pleasant countenance. And the eighth level, and this is the reason why we're reading this, a lower level than that is giving him with sadness. So the lowest level of giving charity is giving a person with sadness. Now, please note the following. This text number 10 is from Maimonides. The same guy who in text number 6, and I'll pull it up again for you here, the same guy in text number 6 said that if you give a charity to a poor person with an unpleasant countenance and with his face buried in the earth, he loses his merit. The same Rambam, the same Maimonides writes in text number 10 that the 8th level of charity, which is the lowest level of charity, but still charity, is when you give a poor person money with sadness, with etzev, with sadness. So even though you have bad intentions, so to speak, still considered charity. So seemingly, and the commentaries pick up on this, it's a contradiction in the Rambam, right? All the commentaries on the Rambam pick up on this. They say the Rambam is contradicting himself. Decide, if I give poor person 1,000 rand with sadness, is it charity or it's not charity? Here you're saying it's charity, but before in text number 6, you're saying it's not charity, so decide. Okay? So let's look at the answer. Text number 11 is the answer. So this is from a commentary called the Shach. The Shach and the Taz. There's actually a famous story about the Shach. I'm not going to mention it now, but the Shach was a very, very famous rabbi. And also on the side, you can see when he lived, which year he lived, what he wrote, the Shulchan Aruch, on the commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. You have his life story on the right-hand side. So the Shach writes like this. He picks up on this question and he says, here's the answer. Giving with sadness. The Rambam, when he says in text number 10, that the lowest level of giving charity is giving with sadness, what does he mean? He says, while he may be upset about giving, at the very least, he doesn't display a frown. If he does, it is not considered one of the 8 levels since he has lost his merit altogether and he transgresses the prohibition of giving with aggrievement. Meaning like this. When the Rambam says that a person is upset or giving with sadness, the recipient doesn't see that he's sad. So therefore, it's still charity and the lowest level of charity. But when you display your frown to the recipient, when the recipient sees and ascertains and sees your sour face, and he sees how angry you are to give the charity, you lose your merit in the giving of charity. It all depends on the dignity of the recipient. Is the poor person's dignity protected or not? If it's protected, I don't care what mood you're in. As long as the other guy got money, I don't care if you're angry, if you're sour, if you had a fight with who knows who, I don't care. As long as you don't display those feelings to the poor person who's receiving that charity. If you display it, this is not called charity. You lose your merit. Right? And in the benching, we actually pray to God every single time we bench. You can look at the text in front of you, text number 12. You actually say to God, Lo lidei matnat basar v'dam, please God, don't force us to accept charity. Like, don't make us dependent upon the gifts of mortal men. Right? God created the world, that there's some people who are rich, some people who are poor. By the way, King David asked God, why do you create rich people and poor people? Why don't you create everybody rich? Why do you create a therapist and a patient? Why can't everybody be the therapist? Why do you create a teacher and a student? Why can't everybody be the teacher? Why do you create this balance, so to speak, that one person is a giver and one person is a receiver, right? In every level that is, doctor-patient, therapist-patient, teacher-student, rich man, poor man. There's always one. David HaMelech said, Chesed ve'emet man yinseru. David HaMelech asked God, why can't everybody be the same? So maybe we'll get to that answer in a second, but the point is that we don't want to be from the receiving end, we want to be from the giving end. And we say that in our blessing. So that's why God says, when you give charity, I want you to protect the dignity of the recipient and don't show yourself with a sour face. Okay, now let's look at a practical relevance of this in our lives. And again, the source is from the Rabbi, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Let's see what he says about this. He says, when one does not cast their eyes away from tzedakah, that is, they give it proper attention, empathizing with the poor person. The key word here is empathy. Empathizing with a poor person, then even if that moment one doesn't actually give charity for whatever reason, maybe you don't have, nevertheless, there's a strong chance that ultimately he will give because he is in this state. So the key is over here, as we'll see in a moment. You know what, let's look at the next source, because it's such a beautiful lesson here. Okay, I'm going to skip out 14 for a moment, and let's go to 15. You see, this is such a beautiful lesson from the Rebbe about empathy, about giving charity. And I'm just going to tell you what he says outside first. You know, when the Jews were in the desert, they were all wealthy. Right? All the Jews were wealthy in the desert. How do we know they were wealthy? Because they came out of Egypt. So first of all, the plague of darkness, they took tons and tons of money from the Egyptians. That's number one. Number two, when the Egyptians were chasing them in the Red Sea, it says that Moses had to take the Jews away from the Red Sea because they had so much money there. They were like taking all the money there, everything. They just took it and took it and took it and took it and took it, all the money, all the money, all the money, all the money. So the Jews were very, very wealthy in the desert. So how did they fulfill the mitzvah of giving charity in the desert? Right? The Jews were in the desert. How did they give charity? If there's no such thing as rich and poor, then in the desert, how did they give charity? So let's look what it says here. The Rebbe says like this. Obviously, even when one encounters a fellow Jew who lacks nothing, materially or spiritually, it's possible to perform charity. How? By greeting him or her, I guess, with a smile, or even in actual deed by inviting him to be your guest, to offer him something to eat, drink, or a place to stay. The Rebbe says over here that giving charity just by greeting him with a smile could be charity. If you have a rich guy, right? There's a rich guy coming and I'm coming past me. How do I give a rich guy charity? I can't give him $1,000. He doesn't need my $1,000. But how do I give him charity? Greet him with a smile. Say, how's it, brother? What's going on? How's life? In fact, as the Jewish people were preparing to receive the Torah after leaving Egypt, this was the form their charity took, right? Because as I explained before, after leaving Egypt, every Jew had whatever they needed. More than that, they were wealthy. By the way, they were fabulously wealthy. And may God bless that this generation should also have that kind of wealth. As the rabbinic literature relates with regard to the tremendous amount of gold and silver the Jewish people took as spoils from Egypt, and especially from after the splitting of the sea, undoubtedly, by the time the Jews received the Torah, it's not possible for anyone, even if they had wanted, to have squandered all that wealth in such a short time. So all the Jews in the desert for the 40 years were wealthy, which begs the question, how did they observe the mitzvah of giving charity when not a single one of them needed anything? By the way, if anybody of you have zoomed out for the class till now, so this is the part, zoom back in, because this is the most beautiful part of the lesson. We are compelled to say this line, that they fulfill the mitzvah of charity not by giving money, but by showing each other a pleasant demeanor. What powerful lesson contained in those words. Incredible, unbelievable. This is the punchline of the whole shiur, of the whole class today. That means like this. Let's say I'm not in a position to give charity. Not everybody can give charity. Let's say my possessions are tied up in stocks, or I don't have cash. Let's just say, right, I just bought a house and all my money's in the house. I don't have any cash. Could be a situation. How do I give charity? You know how you give charity? Just be nice. It doesn't cost you anything. Showing a pleasant demeanor, because that is dignity. Somebody comes to ask you money and I don't have money, just be nice to them. Empathize. Relate to them. Be nice to them. That is how you give charity. That is a secret to giving charity. And not only that, that is how you give charity to a rich person, right? Imagine, I can't fulfill the mitzvah to a poor person, to a rich person. Only a poor person comes to me, I give him money. But what happens if a rich person comes to me? How do I give him money? How do I fulfill the mitzvah of tzedakah? Very easy, just be nice. Say hello, say good morning, say good afternoon, say Yuchandat Benia, Hiya Chana. That's it. That's all you do. And mean it, by the way. You got to mean it. You can't just say those words. You actually have to mean it, because then it says words that exit a heart, enter a heart. When you mean it, then it's going to enter the other person's heart. Okay, so the whole shiur today, we had to sum up so far, we had the idea of the contradiction in the Rambam in Maimonides. On the one hand, Maimonides states that when you give charity with a sour face, you lose the merit. On the other hand, Maimonides says that even if you give with sadness, it's still charity. How do you reconcile that? Very simple. It depends on the recipient, what he or she see, what they sense from you. And that idea gives rise to the idea of dignity when it comes to charity. Okay, and the cherry on the top of this shiur is right over here in text number 16. The Medrash says, the more than the benefactor does for the beggar does for the benefactor. That means like this. In essence, the poor person gives the rich person more than the rich person gives the poor person. So let's analyze that for a second. The rich person gives 1,000 rand to charity. The poor person got 1,000 rand. I mean, 1,000 rand is great. You can go buy some ice cream, buy some food, buy whatever you want to do. It's a great amount. Says the Torah, the 1,000 rand the poor person got, but the poor person gave the rich man the gift of giving. You see, to give is the most pleasurable thing there is in the world. And this was the answer that God gave King David. King David, you asking me why I didn't create everybody rich, why I didn't create everybody as a doctor, right? As a giver, everybody as a teacher, everybody as a therapist, because the gift of giving is the greatest gift of all. If everybody would be rich, nobody would be able to give charity in the sense of a dollar amount, a rand amount. So in order to give the gift of giving, that's why I'm giving. By the way, why is the gift of giving greater than the gift of receiving? Very simple, because who's the ultimate giver? God. God gives us everything. Look at today, right? We just got power back in Marentia area. God gives us power. I know it's by me it's Orange you give it, or Con Edison. I forgot which electric company is in South Africa, but the electric company in South Africa doesn't give it. It's God. So God gives us everything. He gave us air to breathe. He gave us health today. He gave us food today. Everything. So God is the ultimate giver, and we are the recipient. When we give, we become godly. We become like God. Think about this. Who loves who more? Does a child love a father more? Or does a father love a child more? I've got to be careful here, because I see my parents just logged in. So I've got to be careful what I say about my parents. But we welcome them from Orange Grove, from South Africa. It's actually a pleasure on Zoom to have my parents here. Normally they can't come to New York, but here they can. So who loves who more? Does a father love a son more, or does a son love a father more? Right, so those of you who have children know that you can't actually compare. There's no comparison. The love that a father and a mother feel for a child is infinitely greater than the love that a child feels for a parent. Right, like they say the famous saying, it takes one mother to raise 10 children, but 10 children have difficulty like taking after a mother. So why is that? Why is it that a father and a mother love a child so much more than a child loves a father and mother? The answer is simple, because the parents give everything to the child. And the more you give, the more you love. Parents, they, from the time of diapering their child, take diapers and giving him food and feeding him and taking care of him or her, and just giving and giving and giving. They go through elementary school and high school, they're giving and giving and giving and giving and giving, and the giving creates love. So God loves us much more than we love him, right? Think about that. God loves us. Do we love God? Not so much, right? God loves us much more than we love him. A parent loves a child much more than a child loves a parent. And that's why the gift of giving is infinitely greater than the gift of receiving, because we become like God in that sense. By the way, that is the secret to a successful marriage as well. I know we don't have a lot of time here, so I'm not going to say the whole thing, but if you Google after this year, Tevye and Golda, right? Tevye asks, in the Fiddler of the Roof, he asks Golda, he says, do you love me? And Golda says, what do you mean, do I love you? Like, what kind of stupid question is that? Do I love? What do you want from me? And so he says, no, do you love me? And she says, do I love you? After 25 years, for 25 years, I've washed your clothes, I've ironed your shirts, I've given you children, I've done everything for you. What do you think love is? You see, the more you give, the more you fall in love. If you give and give and give and give and give, you will fall more and more in love. The secret to a successful relationship is to give your spouse and give and give. Take out the garbage, wash the dishes, take her out, go shopping with him, go to the cricket games with him. Like give and give. The more you give, the more you love. So that's with relationships. The more I give, the more I love. By the way, charity is the same thing. Charity and love are the same idea. The more you give, the more you make. Right? You want to know the secret to success is to give money. You give money, you make more money. You want to make 10,000 Rand, you give 1,000 Rand. You want to make 100,000 Rand, you give 10,000 Rand. You want to make 10 million Rand. I'm telling you a secret now that's not written in any of those guru books. You want to make 1 million Rand, you give 100,000 Rand to charity. That's how you will make it. Well, how do I know this? Because charity is the only thing that God says and promises. Test me. I promise you it will work. Love is the same thing. You want to truly fall in love, you give to your spouse. Give. You will fall more and more and more in love. Okay, and just to wrap it up, I know we got till 2:15 here, or 8:15 by you. So this is one way to explain why one should give charity with a pleasant countenance. After all, since extending support to the poor person and his family, of what import is a pleasant countenance? Certainly displaying a frown while giving charity is to be condemned, since quite obviously it can cause an embarrassment and so on. But what is imperative is there to give with a smile. The explanation is that giving charity with a smile is a way to show solidarity and to empathize that the giver realizes that he's also receiving something from the poor person, since if not for the recipient, he would not be able to fulfill the mitzvah of charity. So I'm going to give it over back to Rabbi Rodney over here. Stopping the share. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.
So Rabbi Vigler, I think we can assume that you really love us. You must love us because you've given us so much tonight, afternoon by you. Really thank you. Thank you for the love. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for giving. I just want to read this out because I'm not sure if everyone saw it. Particularly your dear parents, Rabbi Vigler Senior online from Barbara. She says, hi all. Rabbi Vigler, I know your dad from 9th Street. Again, this is Barbara Garnett, Orange Grove Shul. My aunt and uncle went to that shul. Take care, everyone, and stay safe. Just before I let Rabbi Vigler go, and again, thanking him for beautiful shiur tonight. If there are any questions, I'm sure Rabbi Vigler will be happy just to take 1 or 2 questions from anyone. So please feel free to unmute and ask.
Rabbi Vigler, what about the concept of charity begins at home?
So charity begins at home. Good question. So in the Shulchan Aruch, it says charity begins at home means there's levels of who to give charity first. So for example, if you have poor people in Johannesburg versus poor people in New York, your priority and prerogative is to give poor people at home, Johannesburg. Same thing with family. Your priority and prerogative is to give family to your siblings first, to your parents, to your close family before you give anybody else. And if God blessed you with more money, so after you've taken care of your family and after you've taken care of your city, then Israel is actually next, by the way. Israel is next on the line. And if you have more money, you can send some to Manhattan.
Is there one last question, possibly?
Rabbi?
Helen, go
Yes.
for it.
Okay. And it's all the time. You pass a certain person at the corner, standing at the corner begging every day, or you might cross that path 4, 5, 6, any amount of times per day. What are the obligations? Because sometimes you can just see on that beggar's face or person's face, they are just so unhappy or unimpressed that, again, she's passed across there and hasn't given me anything. Is there any amount of times you have to give, or what is the arrangement? Thank you.
So your question could come in a couple of parts, and I'll tell you now. There's if you Google homeless people in the Upper West Side, so there's a whole cry now in Manhattan. Basically, because of COVID-19, the mayor has put a lot of homeless people. He's put them in the most luxurious hotels in the wealthiest zip code in the world, because of Corona. So there's a whole outcry. There's homeless people all over the place now in Manhattan, where I am. Same like Louis Botha, I guess. Where. So, anyways, there's a lady right outside near us that is there, and I periodically, she's outside our Chabad center, our shul. So I give her pizza, or I give her some yogurt, water. And I actually like her. She's a very nice lady. But I think if I would give her money, it would actually be a sin. Not only would it not be tzedakah, it would be a sin. And the reason is because she has a bottle of vodka every single day, from the morning to the night. I see this. People give her money, and she literally goes with that money, goes to the local store, buys vodka, whiskey, or beer. She can drink, man. Hey, Jana, she drinks, this lady, and she just drinks herself the whole entire day. So if that's what the money would go for, I don't think it's a mitzvah at all. But to give her food would be. So it depends on the situation. Depends who's there. In general, when it comes to non-Jewish population, we give them charity mipnei darkei shalom, because of ways of peace. We don't want to have enemies amongst Israel, so that's why we do give them money as well.
Helena, I think what Rabbi Vigler said as well, the idea that I think people know that it's impossible to give to every beggar on the street, but at the same time, you can wind down your window and say hello, a smile on the face. Not that you've ignored them and they're just part of the scenery. Just having that nice smiling face to the person. I hope you have a good day. I hope you do get some money today. It's another way of just extending charity, extending kindness to someone else. Rabbi Vigler, thank you once again for your time. I just want to also share, I think it's so important to share these type of messages from Evelyn Green, who herself needs no introduction. So she writes, brilliant shiur. I know your parents from 9th Street Shul, as I grew up in that shul. My late grandfather was a foundation member, and my dad was on the committee for many years. So that's from Evelyn, and thank you, Evie, for joining. And I do see your dear parents online. Rabbi Vigler, just to you, to your family, to your kehillah, your parents, just a Shana Tova, Toiva. Just thank you so much for your time, for your words of inspiration. And as I said, please God, we will have you again. I'm sure the kehillah would love to hear about all the tremendous work you do for the Chayalei Tzahal, for the wounded soldiers, the chesed that you do, aside from your duties as a spiritual leader of your community.
Thank you very much. To you all, Shana Tova Mituka, and if you welcome me again, I'll come. Pleasure, anytime. Thank you, Rabbi Richard.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining. Have a good night. Have a good afternoon, Rabbi Vigler.
Thank you. Bye-bye.